All right. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Steve Dolinsky. I'm the founder of Pizza City Fest. All right. Any Chicagoans in the house? Any Chicagoans? No? All right, a couple of you maybe. All right, anyway. This is year 3. We're so excited to be back here at LA Live. This is just my favorite week of the year. We've been all over town talking about pizza, and the mission here is really simple. It's to illuminate, to shine a light on little pizzerias that you may not have heard of. It's to educate, teach people about pizza, how to appreciate pizza, how to make pizza, and it's about donate. We are partnering with Culinary Careers Program yet again, presenting them a $10,000 check for their scholarships for kids going to culinary school. So it's a win-win all the way around, and we like kicking off the panels every year with the dough whisperers, because these folks really know dough. They think about dough, they dream of dough, they have nightmares about dough. And these are the people to ask questions of. If you have any questions about baking at home, I always do a show of hands. How many people here consider themselves amateurs, weekend warriors? Maybe you got a pizza oven at home. All right, that's a good 20%. Okay. How many people consider themselves more advanced? Like, are they semi-pro or going into the business? Only a handful of you. Okay. All right. Well, that's good for the panel to know as they speak. I'm going to turn things over to our incredible moderator back again as the moderator for our Dough Whisperers panel. Big fan of hers. She's been an editor and a writer for many publications, including Daily Candy, but she is currently the LA food editor for SF Gate. And she had a great story this past week about one of our friends, David Turkel, and his efforts with the LA Pizza Alliance, which you should definitely read. David's going to be a moderator back here tomorrow. Hopefully you'll come back tomorrow for more pizza. Please give a warm Pizza City Fest welcome for Karen Palmer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. Let's give Steve a round of applause for this amazing festival. I'm so thrilled to be on stage with these 3 gentlemen who are true experts in the field of pizza. To my immediate left, I think Tony, last year, I think I called you the EGOT of pizza, and I'm going to stick by that. Not only has Tony Gemignani won like every pizza award out there, including world championships, he's also the founder of several different pizza restaurants, including Tony's Pizza Napolitana, which is in the top 10 of the top 50 pizzerias in the world. I mean, that's no small thing. Also, Capo and Slice House, which now has more than 25 locations in California, Nevada, and Utah. He's open in Burbank and Universal City now. And my only request for you is to open one on the West Side so I don't have to drive to Burbank. Okay, all right, it's coming. Great. So, Tony, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next to him, we have Daniel Holzman. You may know Daniel as the co-founder of the Meatball Shop in New York City, but he also comes from a fine dining background. You may not know this, but Daniel worked at Le Bernardin in New York City when he was 15 years old. Not too shabby. He opened Danny Boy's Famous Original Pizza here in Los Angeles in 2021 and now has 2 locations. And I also, Daniel, just want to give you props because after the horrible wildfires in January, Danny Boy's was one of the first places to step up and offer free pizza to first responders and people in need. So thank you for everything that you've done. And last but not least, we have Noel Brohner, who is what we like to call a dough doctor. He consults with pizzerias all over the world. At any given time, he has thousands of students, online students taking his tutorials, and he's working with hundreds of pizzerias. So you've probably had his dough and not even known it. And I also, Noel is doing so much in the advancement of online education around dough and pizza. So thank you for being here. So we're going to start with a couple of little icebreakers. Is everybody in the audience familiar with the game Marry, F, Kill? All right. So we're going to play a little round of that. So gentlemen, New York style pizza, Neapolitan, and the pan pizza of your choice. Marry, F, Kill. Who wants to go first?
Well, if I were to kill one style, that would be Altoona pizza. Do you know that one?
Yes.
American cheese on top, not the sexiest. If I were to, you said F a pizza? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I like my pizzas a little thicker. So I'd probably go for Detroit style. It's crispy on the outside, but really nice and soft in the middle.
Love that.
And if I were to marry one, probably New Haven, coal fire.
All right. Okay.
Pizza, yeah.
Going out of the box there. I like
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Okay. Daniel.
I feel my wife is in the audience, so I'm going to be.
This is in live, right?
I grew up in New York City on 83rd Street, and for me, that's the pizza that I love, and so I would sleep with and marry that pizza, and I get rid of Neapolitan pizza because why not?
Wow.
Just
bold.
to be controversial.
That's bold.
I just
I
don't
love
like
it.
floppy pizza.
All right. No flop. No. All right, Noel.
Well, you guys already took all my answers, so I'm going to have to come up with some new ones. Yeah, share. We're sharing. So I grew up eating New York pizza, so I would probably marry that. I would probably have passionate sex with a pan pizza. I do love a Detroit, but because Tony already took my answer, I'm gonna say grandma pie because it's a little
Ooh,
kinky
okay.
That's a little scary.
and a little scary too. I love me some Italians, and I do love me some Neapolitan, but I would slit its throat for
Wow.
all of the
okay.
reasons that we
All right.
all agree.
I feel like
sorry.
we're breaking some news here. I love this, you guys. All right, next, icebreaker before we get into some more serious questions. What would be your desert island pizza? If you could only eat one pizza for the rest of your life, what style would it be and what would be on top of it?
I'll go first, so Tony doesn't steal my answers again.
I won't
So
take
anybody
grandma.
ever been to Rome for pizza? So some of my favorite pizza in the world is in Rome. There's Gabriele Bonci, there's Forno Campo dei Fiori. My first love of Roman-style pizza came from Sullivan Street, Jim Leahy in New York, who learned from Forno Campo dei Fiori in Rome. And I remember going there, and it was the potato pizza with rosemary and olive oil and maybe I'll say Malden salt, but probably they don't use Malden in Italy. That's the one.
All right. I mean,
I mean,
sounds delicious.
and if you want to put some stracciatella on top of that and maybe some prosciutto,
crazy.
I mean, it's my island, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's your island, gentlemen.
I was saying, she asked me this question in the back, and I said I'd do a Chinese food on top of my pizza, so I could bring multiple food forms to the island and really enjoy my time there.
It's funny. I was thinking Roman too, just because you have a 3-foot long Campo di Fiori, which I've been in that kitchen before. It's communal. It'll last long. You're stuck on an island, So Roman style too.
Love that. All right. Thank you guys for being good sports. Since we do have so many, enthusiasts in the audience, some who are just starting to make pizza, I'm curious to hear from each of you, what are some of your tips for beginners who are just starting to work with dough? Obviously, it's a very complex thing. Just give me some of your basic tips for pizza enthusiasts.
Well, usually when you start out making pizzas at home, the first thing is the dough. So people have trouble making dough or having the dough cook right in a home oven, 500 degrees, 520, convection bake or just regular bake. A browning agent helps, a higher gluten protein flour helps. Your hydration's important, but depending on the flour, I love 65% on up, not down. I think understanding that not everything goes on before the bake. A lot of ingredients go on post-bake, meaning what's finished on a pizza, like prosciutto, arugula, Parmesan Reggiano, some sort of drizzle, like your hot honey or whatever. So I think there's a lot. I think a baking steel is great to invest in. Big pizza stones were great, but I say not just don't invest in one, invest in two. So you have two real estates of areas that you can go into in your oven that you could start it on top, cook it halfway, go to the bottom, finish it, and out. Just like in our pizza ovens. We cook a pizza as long as we can. We check the bottom. If it needs to go to a hot spot, we put it in a hot spot in an oven. So 2 stones or steels, which I like steels. Browning agents in your dough to help caramelize. Higher protein, higher gluten. Making your dough 24 hours or more instead of less. Toppings post-bake more than pre-bake. So,
All right. Thank you, Tony.
I'm for me personally, specific to the dough, I think changing one, either eat one factor at a time so that you can actually tell what your change affected. So like, I'm changing the time, I'm going to keep all the ingredients and then the temperature is the same. Or I'm changing one ingredient, or I'm changing the temperature, but not all at the same time, or it's really challenging to replicate. I'd say is probably, for me, the most important way to figure out, because it's impossible to know what you're doing otherwise. It's on a microscopic.
I don't know how to follow those answers. They were both excellent.
You got to go first.
For anybody who's ever taken any of my classes, you'll know that I'm a diehard for three things. Number one is a thermometer. I like to track the temperature of the room, the flour, the water, the dough, and a scale. That's two. We all know what a scale is for, right? The third is some kind of notebook, or let's maybe even call it a journal. There you go. So like my workflow is, here's my clipboard, and I have, these are perforated pieces of paper, and they go into my journal. And I have journals for all the events I do, all the clients, every bake, except for maybe 2 or 3 in the last 15 years, is in a book somewhere. Because what I always say is if you make the best or the worst pizza of your life, you want to go back and either duplicate it or never do it again. And if you write everything down, mostly times and temps, you'll be able to replicate any pizza you've ever made and definitely not duplicate a bad one.
I love that. And Noel, we actually chatted the other day, and you were telling me how, your approach to pizza is very much about like bread making. So can you talk a little bit about how, pizza dough is similar to like how the masters in France and, baguette makers?
How much time do we have? So long story short, I started trying to make pizza maybe 20 years ago, and it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Everybody said it was good, but I knew it was terrible. And I couldn't figure out why. I was following the instructions on the recipes, and so I did something crazy. I was trying to help somebody open a pizzeria just because I thought, how hard could it be? It's pizza, right? So hard. So I sent myself to French Culinary Institute, which is a cooking school now defunct in New York, for the artisan bread program. And I wanted to go for the weekend or the week, but my schedule was too busy because I had another career, actually 2. But I had 2 months of the summer off, and so I enrolled in a 2-month course. And long story short, I learned to make baguettes and bagels and pretzels and pain de mie, and we even did one day on pizza. And what I realized was that the ghost in the machine is time and temperature. And what they taught us about was not just time and temperature, but these things like fermentation and gluten development. And once you understand how all those things fit together, the rest, as they say, is cake.
Daniel, Tony, do you have any thoughts on that? On, pizza being similar to bread making and...
I mean, I think most of us, like, you put cheese and sauce on almost anything and it tastes good as long as you use good ingredients. And there's a lot of artistry that goes into it. But ultimately, the dough at the base is the heart and the soul and the science behind what makes great pizza or really great melted cheese and sauce. And so for me, that approach of bread baking, the only addition I got nothing to say.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I had a pizzeria for about 15 years, and I went and studied in Italy for a while. Then I opened up a school. Digestibility is a word that's commonly used in Europe. Understanding how to mature your dough properly. Yeast feeds on simple sugars. The longer you let your dough feed, more digestible it'll be. Depending on the strength of your dough, the length of the maturation. You have to understand the proteins from a 9% to a 15%, give or take. On how strong they can be, it'd be like 2 helium balloons, and you have one 9%, and you have another one that's 14%. And one starts to deflate sooner which is your lower protein, and the one that's just holding on its own for 2 days and 3 days, and you're wondering why, and you're understanding the chemistry behind dough and why you add salt and for flavor or things like that. So it's interesting to understand, the lactic acid, the acetic acid, a starter, a poolish, a biga, a mother. You hear all these terms. It's a little confusing. Maybe I just want to use straight yeast or do a bulk ferment. So there's a lot over the years that I think we all three have learned, and they all work. You just got to understand how they work. I wouldn't say one's better than the other. Some are very technical, and some can be just like straight yeast. And I just want to make a classic 62% hydrated New York dough, straight yeast, 24-hour rise, refrigerator, and just that. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we'll tinker with things and try to do a sourdough starter that's 30 years old, and you taste that acid in the back, and you're like, whoa, that blows me away. So I think it's just the experimenting, the R&D that you do to see what works for you is important, not what somebody's telling you what to do. It's like, what do you like? Somebody comes to me and says, is it 20% biga in my dough? I'm like, I don't know. Did you like it? Did you eat it? Well, it was okay. Well, make what you like. Serve what you enjoy. That's what's important.
So, Tony, you mentioned New York style and fermentation. So, Daniel, we had spoken the other day on the phone about you've gotten some heat online about how long you ferment your dough because you do a New York style pie. So I'm curious. I didn't even know that was a thing you could get heat for online. So can you talk a little bit about your process and what, why that's caused some conversation?
So we ferment our dough for an abnormally long time at our pizzeria. And, starting out, ultimately we had a goal of what we wanted it to taste like. And we took a lot of advice from a lot of folks in the industry. The pizzeria business and the food business in general, hospitality business, folks are really down to share, and it's wonderful. So I can call anybody and ask for help. And the truth is that I took his class before I started a pizzeria, and I've called. He didn't return my call. No, he wasn't at the. I wasn't at the. No. And ultimately, there are a lot of things that all these folks that have tons of, there's all this institutional knowledge that folks have for thousands of years, right? Like have created these rules. And a lot of people agree on a lot of things, but there are a few things that are kind of open to interpretation and everybody disagrees about. And exactly how long you should ferment your dough, I didn't get a clear answer. And if you think about a New York City pizza, when I think about making a great New York City pizza, what would I do if I had all the space and all the time in the world? In New York, there's very small walk-ins. The temperatures aren't really amenable to like a really long fermentation process. I mean, until 50 years ago, there weren't refrigerators that you could reasonably, on a commercial level, refrigerate or cool down your dough to ferment it this long. So like, why is New York City pizza a 24-hour fermentation? It's like, well, because that was like most food stuff. So like if it grows together, it goes together. That's how it developed over time based on the resources available. And so when we started making our pizza, I left it in the fridge for 2 days and I loved the flavor. And I left it in the fridge for 3 days and I loved the flavor and I started to really love the texture. And then after 4 days, I was like, this is where the texture and the flavor for me come together based on what I love. And I started asking folks in the industry, how can I get that sooner, earlier? Because ultimately, I don't want to spend the money to store my dough for that long. And nobody was able to help. Everybody could say, here are the 15 techniques to build flavor fast. You can add beer. You could start with a poolish. You can do a pre-ferment. There's so many ways to build your flavor fast. But the specific texture that I loved so much, I was going to ask you, is there a way that I can get that, like the micro blisters on and that the different shapes and different colors that I love earlier? Because I would. But for me, and one other thing, like the patience is the number one virtue in bread baking or pizza making or anything where you're waiting for something other than you, like God to tell the yeast to go. You know what I mean? You got to wait for it because it doesn't happen. You can't force it. That's it. That's what I got.
So, Tony, do you have any advice for him? I'm just kidding.
How can I accelerate the
Okay.
texture?
I do.
Oh, no.
Acidic acid.
So I have two quick stories. First story is my second consulting job ever was working for Ori at Bestia. I got really lucky. I'm all for luck in this business because I worked so hard for so many years and had none of it. And so that was a sourdough project, and I got called in because Ori had a 6 sourdough. And what was the name of the guy? Was it Lehrman, who was the dough doctor, Tony?
Tom Lehman. It was the dough doctor.
People sometimes call me that, but I feel uncomfortable because there's somebody who is the dough doctor. So I'm the dough whisperer, or I'm something like that. But anyway, I got called in to fix his sourdough, and I fixed it pretty fast. And one of the trades that I made with Chef Ori, because he couldn't afford to pay me, he said, was that I could come in on Mondays and play with his spiral mixer. And I really wanted to do Campo de Fiore style high hydration dough. So it was this giant mixer, and I didn't have any room to put it. So I was stashing it in kitchens all over the city, and I would let him taste it. After a day, 2, 3. Anyway, long story short, after 8 days, 1 week, I brought him some, and he said, "This is the best bread I've ever had anywhere in the world. Could you do it again?" And I said, yeah. And eventually I did, but yeasted dough for 8 days is impossible. It's stupid, right? But shameless plug, I'm working with a new company called Leaven Foods, and they came up with an instant wild yeast and an instant sourdough. It's called Leaven Foods. And we're getting flavor after, there's Justin over there. We're getting awesome flavor. We're getting awesome blisters. We're getting all the best texture. 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. It's really, Tony, I think, sampled some of it at the Pizza Expo. Now, but these guys are microbiologists, so they're doing deep dives. So if anybody's interested, shameless plug, check out Leaven Foods. We're a brand new startup, and he cold called me, and a lot of people cold call me, and I don't return their calls. But I never got cold called by anybody ever here been cold called by a microbiologist? And I was just like, wow, I think this guy is onto something, and so we just launched a product, and
Amazing.
it'll
All right.
solve all your
Well,
problems.
yeah, everybody go check it out. That was a great plug.
You're saying time and temperatures are important. What do you allow your dough? What do you have your dough rise? What temperature is it?
We leave our end of mix temperature for between 4 and 6 days is 65 degrees, and it hits the refrigerator. The ball hits the refrigerator at 68 degrees. At 74 degrees, it's 1 day, and it's 2 degrees per day below that.
But what is your refrigerator set at?
The refrigerator holds the dough at 38.
So if you want to speed up fermentation, you should have a dough refrigerator that's actually at 50, 48. Your dough would be ready sooner, but it would be a 3-day dough. It would be like a 5-day dough. So I would look at having a separate refrigerator, walk-in, whatever you can. Usually the health department, if it's only dough, they won't worry about it unless it's cheese and things. So you have to adjust your temperature to really make it a 3-day instead of a 5-day.
It's amazing.
Can I double what Tony just said? For me, he nailed it because I worked on a project. Anybody ever heard of Flour and Water in San Francisco?
Great restaurant.
So I helped with the dough at the original restaurant 10 years after they opened, and then I was the guy that helped with the dough at their pizzeria. And I was scared to death. I couldn't sleep for months because Tartine was right down the street. And there's so many, Tony was down the street. Everybody's down the street. And I'm like, who am I to go to San Francisco and think that I can create an awesome dough? But I came up with this idea, and it's exactly what Tony just said. Maybe you came up with it, and I just stole it from you telepathically. But here's what we do. We hold the dough for up to 48 hours in the refrigerator, and then we have these roll-in retarders, which are just roll-in refrigerators, and you sub out the thermostat for a candy thermostat, and we roll those in at 50, 55, 60 degrees, and they sit for 8, 10, 12 hours, and the dough is perfect, and you don't need nearly as much yeast as you do for a standard like New York dough. And man, the window of opportunity is enormous.
If you do the math on it and the percentages, you'll cut 2 days out of it.
2 days for
you
sure.
want
Ours is a 3-day dough.
So you're saying you start cold and then you wait 2 days and then
Yeah.
you go warmer.
Yeah.
You're saying 50 degrees. Is there a difference between the temperature at the
It
beginning
depends on
versus
your
the
dough.
end?
It depends on the strength of your dough. Your temperature coming out of your mixer is at 68, 70.
But like when you start with a warmer and then cool it versus starting colder and then warm it, does that?
Yeah, don't
Can
go
you
backwards.
speak?
Always
Is
go
it like
forward.
you're adding more acetic
don't go
acid?
backwards. You always go forward. So
Always get warmer.
You always want to start and then move your way up instead of going back and then forth and back. So
We're gonna
we'll
change
talk
this
about
into the
your thing
Danny
later.
fixing Danny Boys production
I love
process.
this. I love that
But-
we're
and just like-
workshopping
just
in
let-
real
no,
time.
I mean,
Hold on, just let everyone know his pizza's amazing.
It is
I mean, we
amazing.
always say up here we can always make it better, right? But I've been to his place and his pizza's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes.
Just let you know.
I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open it up to all of you to ask questions because we have these experts up here. Tony, this isn't necessarily dough specific, but I'm curious. Obviously, you've been expanding Slice House quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit about the rise in like artisanal pizza shops, and especially here in California, what you're seeing in the field right now?
Yeah, really all over the U.S. You know, I've done a few keynotes over the years. I've been lucky to do it at Pizza Expo, but a couple, maybe 8 years ago, I said there's going to be a rise in slice concepts around the U.S., and it's not going to be dollar slices like you see here, $2 or $3. You're going to see people pay for a quality slice with chef-driven ingredients, and the Sparrows of yesterday are going to be revamped. And I would say when I was in an audience of maybe 1,000, a lot of people were like, no way. And these were pizza people and operators. And I remember one of the Sparrows came up to me and said, I'm Vincent Sparrow. You just kind of talked about my grandfather and stuff. I said, well, sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect it. No, I'm working on a slice concept. And this was, you always had the Joes and Supremas that were always amazing. But this was before Lou Industries, and this was before, let's say, maybe Pauly G's or whatever, and this is slices, and I said there's going to be a lot of post ingredients. I mean, we were putting burrata on slices before burrata was really available. We would get it from Italy on a plane every 2 weeks. We were finishing with pesto and drizzling our own hot honey with Calabrian chilies. So, a lot of people didn't understand it, and a lot of people don't. And all of a sudden now you see the renaissance now, and it's incredible. People will pay for a quality Sicilian, Grandma, Detroit, you name it. So it's evolved a lot. I mean, we've been lucky to see it. I mean, you see LA, what they're doing out here. You see New York, of course, New York is always New York. But New York was always pepperoni, a plain. It was maybe a vodka sauce. It was never that much out of the box, like, honestly. And now you see, like $9 slices being sold. So that industry has really taken off within our pizza industry, and it's great to see. I've been lucky enough to kind of be in that. And I have a lot of full service and slice houses and things like that, but it's just great to see that. And it's not just some cheap slice that you're giving to a kid to make them happy. It's a gourmet slice, and I love that.
Do you guys?
Yeah, I want to say that Americans have been programmed to think of food, but pizza really at the core of this as a value-driven decision for the last, since commercial television, right? Like, and thank the Lord for Pizza Huts and Domino's for, making pizza ubiquitous, fantastic food that everybody knows about, and helping to, quell the xenophobia against Italians, folks coming over here. So like, it's been wonderful. However, the shift to a quality-driven decision rather than a value-driven decision is this next inevitable step that, thanks to you folks and all the people making great pizzas, is starting to happen. And it's why all of us in the industry sit together, not as competitors, but helping each other on. A rising tide is raising all of the quality of pizza. So thank you guys for that.
Well, thank you guys. No.
Yeah, I mean, they said it all. I just want to like kind of repeat something that I just heard, which is that I feel like consumers now, with the rise of food TV and also the ubiquity of like uni ovens and all kinds of beautiful mixers and great flour, you guys are making often better pizza at home than most people are making at neighborhood pizzerias, and I'm not kidding. Now, they're making 600 pizzas and you're making 3. So there's a reason for that. But one of the great things about people getting educated about product, about different styles of pizza, about different cheeses and sauces and fermentation and hydration, is that you bring it to the pizzerias and then they need to up their game. And I really appreciate that. I've opened hundreds of pizzerias in the last 15 years, and I love when people walk in and start asking about my dough. We don't have any secrets. I don't know about you guys. No secrets. You want to know the hydration? I can't really give out the entire recipe because that's the chef's job. But there's no real secrets, It's most of the quote unquote secrets are just like forgotten technology, fermentation, gluten development, maybe even patience, if that's an element of technology.
All right. Well, speaking of there being no secrets, I'd love to open up the floor to questions right here.
If you guys had to quantify, how much does fun play a role in the pizza making
F-U-N?
process? Yes, F-U-N.
Not F-U-N-K.
No, or both. For the amateur pizza maker, does that come later on in the process? Does it require more focus and dedication to the minutia early on in the stage?
Yeah, I mean, look, my wife teaches kids piano, and she could tell you better than any of us. Like, if it's not fun, you don't want to continue doing it. And the time that you put into something is the equation that will eventually get you the expertise. So if you kill the fun, then like...
I just think making food in general is fun. I mean, when you're in a restaurant, you have customers and employees and all of that. But when I'm making pizza or whatever with my son or my wife or whatever I'm making, I think it's amazing. I mean, I remember watching my mom cook, and she loved to cook for hours, and she was smiling. She was hot, and she was, but she was enjoying herself. And I remember that smile, and I really didn't understand that smile when I was a kid. And then all of a sudden later, I'm watching my son, and I'm cooking for him, or we're cooking together. I mean, food's communal. It's a beautiful thing. I love it. So.
Okay, best way to make a thick crust pan pizza? And then when did you know this is what you wanted to do? When did you know that moment?
For me, the best way to make a thick pizza is to use a lot of water. We call it a high hydration dough. So Tony was saying he likes to start at 65% and go up from there. I would say for a pan pizza, I like to start at 75% and go up from there. And the wonderful thing about a high hydration dough is that it's wet and it's sticky, but if you're making a pan pizza, you don't have to worry about stretching it, putting it on a peel, sliding it into the oven. You put it in a pan, you proof it, you top it, you bake it. It's incredible.
Plus, high hydration gives you bigger bubbles, which makes you a lighter outcome, even though it's thicker, so you get bigger rise, like focaccia.
And when did you know this was your moment? When did you guys feel like this was your calling?
The paycheck?
On the rise side, your flour is important. Certain flours will get a better rise than others. I don't know how thick you're really looking at getting it. I mean, your ounce weight is important too, depending on your size of your pan. So you may say, or grams. So you have to play with your weight. The strength of the dough could mean something if you're par baking your dough and you're allowing it to par bake, and then sometimes you'll see it maybe not get a rise. Americano versus Caputo versus Super Americano. If I were to have two of those doughs, did the exact same thing, my Super Americano will get a better rise than my standard Americano, and that's by Caputo. So certain flours can handle it versus others. Some will collapse, some won't get as good of a rise, so you need to fool around with that. Your temperature sometimes helps if you do par bake it and you have it in a proofing cabinet or on top of your oven or a warm area. So there's some factors involved other than hydration too that we all love when it comes to pan pizza to be higher than lower.
I mean, I think my come to pizza moment was when I realized how hard it was and how I underestimated the task of just trying to make a New York pizza. And then once I'll never say master because I'll never master any style, but once I made a really good New York pizza, then I realized, oh my God, there's all these other pizza styles that I never heard of. Neapolitan, tavern style, Chicago thin crust, pizza romana. I mean, it just keeps going. So I fell down the rabbit hole a long time ago, and I'm still falling and loving every minute of it.
I mean, there's a complacency culture that has overtaken America, which is a sad place, and I think passion is at the heart of success for us as a community and as a culture and as a people. And I'm passionate about everything I do, and I'm excited about it. And I took up welding at the same time that I took up pizza making, and I got bored of it, and I never got bored of pizza. So you know it's your calling when you continue to be excited about it every single day.
I fell in love with it when I was early in my age, with my grandfather taking me to Uncle Joe's as a kid. Well, when I was 17 years old and we opened up our first pizzeria, when I really had a ticket in front of me and there was customers waiting and I had to make that pizza, I stretched it, I made it, I cooked it, I landed it on that table, and I watched that customer eat it for the first time. And I had that self-gratification that was like, it just had such a good feeling. So I fell in love with it right when I started 34 years ago.
Yeah, so I have a question. One of the great things about Pizza City Fest is getting to try a lot of pizzas really quickly. And as a pizza amateur, I want to ask you guys, what is one question you're asking yourself as you're trying a pizza for the first time and you're taking that first bite?
Well, the crust is always one thing I go for. For me, I always look for 3 different flavor profiles. Each bite should take you through a journey. If it's sweet, it doesn't have to be sugar sweet. It can be basil sweet. If there's some acidity, it could be from the balsamic reduction or maybe a little bit from the tomatoes. But it's always about balance. It's not about over complex ingredients. And I think that's important when it comes to pizza or any food that we cook.
Does it taste good?
I mean, I feel like I have a lot of rules because that's the kind of person I am. But when I eat pizza, I feel like a child. And I try to like live in the wonder of the moment. Like, what am I eating? How am I experiencing it? Is it good? But like, I have one silly rule, and I feel like because I'm a dough guy, I want to see at least 3 colors of brown on my pizza. And that's just me. It's not a real rule, but I feel like if you can get a dark brown, a medium brown, and a light brown, that translates to flavor, texture, aroma, everything I
Sherry
love.
Yard said, the only thing blonde in my bakery, baby, is me.
Yes, sir.
Well, guys, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. Thank
Thank you.
Steve. And we'll,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Karen.
And thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Tony's going to be signing his book right after this
Yeah,
at the
book
merch
signing.
tent. Book signing. Get the Pizza Bible. Tony will sign it for you. Take pictures over in the merch tent. Our next demo in 15 minutes back here. Any dough for any oven, baking at home. It's going to be really instructional. Come back in 15, guys. Thank you so much. Can I jump up there too? Yeah. These are my people. Want to get in the middle? I don't know.